Thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's wonderful to welcome customers and colleagues from all around the UK and Europe to celebrate Mapei's 30th year in cycling. Now, as promised, for a short talk and Q&A, we have renowned sports journalist and television presenter Ned Boulting. Welcome up to the stage.
Good evening. I had absolutely no idea when I accepted this gig that it would be like trying to do stand-up comedy at the Edinburgh Fringe. At least I sold 1 or 2 tickets anyway. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for all the people who are still speaking to each other. Can we have a little bit of a collective for those of you who are listening? Just maybe a little bit of a shh. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mapei! I have no idea, but I'm beginning to pick up the vibes. I probably need to do a little sort of a systems check in this room to figure out how many of us know how much about road racing. So if I say, for example, the name of a famous bicyclist, you give me some sort of reaction, and judging on that, I can gauge how much what sort of levels of informed knowledge there are in this room, right? So let's start with Mark Cavendish. Good start. We'll continue with Lizzie Deignan. Excellent. All right. Okay. It's going well. How about Casper Asgrave? We can move up to level 7 this evening. That's amazing. No, listen. I don't want to sort of patronise those of you who really love the sport and get on with the sport and know a lot about the sport by dumbing it down. Equally, I want to. And this is what I do in my commentary, and I've been doing it for 20 years in the Tour de France, hopefully successfully. I want to extend a welcoming hand to those of you who are perhaps here at the World Championships, coming to your first ever experience of a road race. Because I had that moment back in 2003 when I was sent for the first time in my life to cover any kind of a bike race at all. And by any kind of a bike race, I mean I've never seen a bloody bike race. Like, not one, ever. And the first occasion that I went to a bike race was to go and see the start of the 2003 edition of the Tour de France, which happened to be the centenary edition of the Tour de France, and an incredibly important one. And the problem was, I was sent there not just as a punter, so to speak, to stand by the side of the road and absorb everything that was going on. I was sent there by ITV to be the on-the-spot reporter. And I managed to culminate my first broadcast by referring to the famous yellow jersey of the Tour de France as the yellow jumper. And that was pretty much quite how I've still ended up 20 years on, still in the job. I've got absolutely no idea, but here I am. So I've got a long association with road racing, with cycling, which we can explore a little bit together if you want. If not, we can totally forget about it. But it's not as long as Mapei's. And here's the thing that people like. Is there anyone in this room? Put your hands up if you are literally not a cyclist and never have ever put on lycra or intend to put on lycra. There's a few at the back, a couple of people at the back here. So if you're into your cycling, you probably pay quite a lot of attention to how you look in terms of the design of your bike and your kit and all that sort of thing. If you're not into your cycling, you think, frankly, we all look like pillars. And rightly so. The thing about the Mapei kit, and for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you do, Mapei sponsored and were identified with one of the most successful road racing teams in the history of the sport for 10 years, from the early 90s until the early noughties. And they were quite naughty as well at times. But Mapei had a kit that can only be described as the best kit. The best kit! It's one way of looking at it. Or someone had raided a kindergarten art creche and sort of got all the plastic things out and smashed them up with a hammer and put them on a jersey. I think it looked great, but I think you really have to be into your cycling to understand why that kit was so good and what it represented. Mapei were at the time just simply unstoppable. I was just double checking some of their statistics. They won the hardest race to win and do it consistently in the entire calendar. It's one of the oldest races in the history of cycling and one of the most brutal. The race called Paris-Roubaix. I think they won it 5 times, it might have been 6, in a very short period of time. And this is what really amazes me. 3 times they finished top 3. So the first 3 on the podium were all Mapei riders. That dominance couldn't last forever, and eventually Mapei, I think, had got what they had for that association out of it and withdrew as a sponsor. But the team still exists, and it's still run by the same venerable Belgian, Flemish, silver-haired gentleman called Patrick Lefebvre, who up until this year, they've had a rough year this year, but up until this year was running the most winning team of any team around, and that includes Ineos and Team Sky, because they win all the big one-day races. Patrick Lefebvre is in Glasgow, which kind of blows my mind. Today I went out myself, I wasn't necessarily working, I was just doing my research because I'm commentating on the elite race of the morning for the BBC. But I was just watching from the side of the road and occasionally using all the very well-marshalled crossing points on the route. And I suddenly found myself next to this sort of, just caught a glimpse of the corner of my eye, this kind of silver-haired pensioner from Glasgow, I thought, And he nudged me, and he went, "When are they going to let us fucking cross?" And I looked around, and it was Patrick Lefebvre, and he was just standing there like a member of the public, just trying to get across the road, like many of us would have done today. And I think that's one of the reasons why this sport means so much to those of us who get it. When the penny drops and when it really gets under your skin, you'll never let it go. Because in many ways, it's a sport that confuses you and overcomplicates things endlessly and is very hard to understand initially. But in another very, very direct way, and that's what we're seeing here in Glasgow, it is a sport that completely connects with the public. Because you can stand at the side of the road here and you can pick any spot on the road over the 14.3 kilometres of this amazing circuit in Glasgow. And you can reach out your hand that far over the barrier and brush one of the greatest riders in the world as they come across. And not just that, down at the start in Edinburgh, you can go and meet them and have a selfie with them. And at the finish, when they all complete the course, most of them, tomorrow, you can meet them. They'll just be milling around in the public. Even now, some of them who are perhaps racing the track and other things, they'll be cruising up and down, having a coffee in Glasgow as we speak. This city is packed with the greatest cyclists in the world at the moment, men and women. And these super games, I think, promise to be something really, really special. So none of this happens without, and this is the thing about road racing, none of this happens without the goodwill and the investment of major sponsors like Mapei. So I would like Sarah, and to the rest of you, I know you've got other people here, I would like, on behalf of anyone who loves this sport, to give Mapei, actually, basically, a bit of a round of applause right now. If that doesn't get me a big bag of free grabs, nothing will. The road race tomorrow, the elite road race tomorrow for the men. The women will race it next weekend because they've only just finished racing the Tour de France for women, so they needed a little bit of a break in between the two. The elite road race for men tomorrow. On this course will be a World Championship road race like there's never been before. I had no idea until I saw it today, I only came up this morning, quite how crackers this circuit is. It's been designed, and I say this quite deliberately with a cycling audience in mind. It's been designed like they were on drugs. What is that all about? It's quite extraordinary. Tomorrow's race starts in Edinburgh, and for the first 120 kilometres, we'll pass through the beautiful countryside, crossing over the Firth of Forth, and then towards Glasgow in this big looping circuit on empty roads, with the hills in the background and the fields in the foreground, and will look, to all intents and purposes, like a stage of the Tour de France, if you like, with slightly greyer skies and fewer sunflowers. But it'll have that kind of serene look, the progress of the peloton. There'll probably be a breakaway of guys who you know are not going to win the race, and the peloton will have it all under control, and the gap will be about 3 minutes, 3 minutes 50 or something like that. And then they'll get to this point in the race called Crow Hill, right? I don't know if anyone's ridden up Crow Hill. You folks from Glasgow, or have you come in from all over the place? All over, so none of us know what we're talking about. Crow Hill, by all accounts, is a 5-kilometre climb, just to the north of Glasgow. And when they get over the top of this climb, they'll drop down for 20 kilometres and then they'll hit the circuit. That's when the whole race will change. Suddenly, they'll start racing when they hit Crow Hill. A 5-kilometre climb with 500 metres that are super, super steep in the middle of the climb. Suddenly they'll flick a switch. And then they'll get to this circuit and it will go bonkers. If today's performances by the junior women and the junior men, and they were brilliant, both the pelotons there, are anything to go by the time the elite men get onto this crazy circuit with its 43 bends and more climbs than I can actually count. I've tried to walk as much of it and I just lose track of the number of times it just goes like that. They do it 10 times. That's 140 kilometres. That's like 85 miles of just going around this circuit. The fatigue is going to be extreme. If it rains, it's going to be very, very dangerous. And it is going to be dynamic and aggressive and totally unpredictable. I literally have no idea what's going to happen. But I can tell you this much, I'm massively looking forward to it. And I'll tell you why. And after I've done this, I want to encourage you, I think, to have a little think about what you want to ask me, because this is an event for all of us who love about, care about the sport, and there's things that we want to discuss together. I'm here to answer your questions rather than just drone on at you like this. So I'm going to open it up to the floor, in other words, in a minute. But I just wanted to sort of leave you with this thought as we look forward to the road race tomorrow, because there are 4 riders that I want to flag up who are racing tomorrow. I'll name them. Mathieu van der Poel, this Dutch rider. He's never won the World Championship. Remco Evenepoel, this young Belgian kid who rides for Patrick Lefevre's team, the Glasgow pensioner who's trying to cross the road earlier, who is the reigning world champion, at least for tonight. Then there's Tadej Pogacar, who won the Tour de France aged 21, which is unthinkable 3 years ago, and has now, for the last couple of years, 4 years ago, for the last couple of years, he has failed to beat his big nemesis Jonas Vingegaard, who isn't here, and even if he was, he wouldn't win this kind of a bike race. Who's the other one? And Wout van Aert, another Belgian, right? Wout van Aert is like cycling's equivalent to a Swiss Army penknife. He can do absolutely everything, and he very nearly, last year at the Tour de France, did do absolutely everything. He won the green jersey, he won a bunch sprints, he won an individual time trial, he won a puncher stage, he almost accidentally became the king of the mountains, and he rescued Jonas Vingegaard's yellow jersey on 2 or 3 occasions. What Wout van Aert did at the Tour de France last year was one of the greatest rides in the history of the Tour de France. So, these 4 riders, this is not normal. This is not normal. I've been following this sport for 20 years. A lot of you in this room would have been following it for a lot longer than me, but I'm heavily invested in it. And I've never seen before a crop of riders like the ones who we are honoured to invite to the streets of Glasgow to compete for the famous Rainbow Bands tomorrow. Genuinely, this sport, the Tour de France, is 120 years old. In 120 years, when they're writing the histories of this sport, they will look back to the early 2020s with total astonishment, because this is the golden generation in road racing, and we're going to witness them at first hand tomorrow. I think it's thrilling. I hope you agree. Yeah? Good. Honestly, I'm genuinely getting Edinburgh Fringe vibes here. I've done the Edinburgh Fringe before as well, but didn't go this far actually. But the one thing I never did at the Fringe was, Sarah, do we have a microphone? Is that right? Yeah, I think there's a funky microphone that we can pass around. Is it Mapei branded? Mapei branded microphone. Sarah, do you want to explain how that works? you're just talking to it. That's it. That's how microphones work. Very simply, just talking to it. So,
so if anyone has a question, I'll review them all.
there's a very brave gentleman right in the middle of the he's going to be first. Yeah. Oh, nothing could go wrong with. Yeah.
Talking to that. Actually, two questions. One, the golden age of young cyclists coming through now, is that because the sport is as clean as it's ever been, and that's why you're getting these young cyclists coming through? And the second question is, who's the better co-commentator? David Miller or Chris Moore?
Let me deal with the easy one about David. Yes, I think it's a really perceptive comment. Really perceptive comment. The sport of road racing is not clean. Yeah? It is not clean because it is an activity which is engaged in by human beings, like accountancy, politics, anything you care to mention. It is slightly corrupt. Yeah? And when large sums of money are involved, it can become very corrupt, especially if a culture grows up around it where this corruption is not just permitted but encouraged. When I first came into the Tour de France arena and started to work as a journalist in it, the first bike rider I ever interviewed was Lance Armstrong. So I joined this caravan, if you like, at the absolute apotheosis of industrialised doping, when nothing could move unless it was bent. What I'm seeing now is that everything's been flipped on its head. So there are riders who are doping now, I have no doubt about that. I don't know who they are, and I honestly don't see performances that make me totally certain that what I'm seeing is doped, which I used to see. But I would never stand here and say it's a clean peloton, because that would be foolish. It's cycling, and it's human. But the difference is that if you're the guy who's doping now, or the girl who's doping, you're the one who's endangering the livelihoods of everybody else on your team. Because a sponsor like Mapei, if they came in to sponsor a team now, the last thing they would want their name associated with would be doping. And every sponsor in the World Tour peloton feels the same. So you're the one taking the risk. Weirdly, 20 years ago, if you were the one riding clean, you were the one who wasn't being professional. Yeah, because you weren't performing to the best of your ability, and you were endangering, therefore, everybody's results and performances. So, that is a massive change. It's flipped everything on its head. And as a result, the peloton is not collectively as strong as it was. They have weekdays, they tire. 3 weeks in the Tour de France is insane. Stuff happens. One or two strong teams can't shut everything down. There are fractures, there are breaks. And where those fractures open up, in the way the sport is written, that allows for riders to be expansive and brilliant and to risk losing in order to win. And also, not to think, I'm just a sprinter, I'm just a time trialist, I'm only a climber. Nowadays, the peloton think, I'm just a bike rider, I can do kind of anything. And I think that's what we see with Evenepoel, with Van der Poel, with Wout van Aert, and with Tadej Pogacar in particular. Yeah? So I think you're dead right. David Miller. Next. No, dear old Chris, dear old Uncle Chris, Uncle Chris Baldwin, we call him, or aka Olympic bloke. The thing is, he can't be good at everything, Chris Baldwin, right? He's had 5 careers. Before he was a professional cyclist, he was a carpenter. Then he became the best professional time trialist in the world. Then he launched a bike brand that he sold to Halfords for an undisclosed amount of millions of pounds. I was with him when he clinched the deal. He got off the phone and he hung up on his lawyers and he went, "A wave of cash has just broken over my head." And then he said, I saw him about a week later, and he said, "Me and Sally were lying in bed the other night, and she had her laptop open, and at one point, and I was reading a book. He lives an exciting life. And I was reading a book, and Sally just closed the laptop suddenly, and I looked around and I said, 'What's up?' And she said, 'I think I've just spent £1 million.' he said, yeah, you're best shot in the laptop. So, bike brand, what have we done? Carpenter, time trialist, bike brand, pundit. He was a really good pundit for years for ITV. He learned his trade doing that. And now he's just restricting himself to the small matter of saving the planet. So Chris Boardman is lots of things, and he does them all brilliantly. But David Miller's the better cocoa. Good question. That might be the only question. What do you think? Has anyone else got anything else? Yeah. Oh, yeah, you'll have to wait for the big... Over here. Don't put your arm in the air again so you can see where you are. Hello.
Hello. You mentioned Van Aert, Van der Poel, Ned Boulting. Do you not think Tom Peacock should have been riding this course?
Yeah. So this course in theory looks like it's Tom Peacock's course. It looks designed for him. But Tom's at a very interesting point in his career now where I think we can see it almost, we can almost read it in the way he races. He doesn't know quite where he fits in anymore. He's no longer the very young kid that he was. He's still a few years younger than those other riders, but he doesn't quite have the measure of them on the road. And I think, without being wrong or disrespectful to Tom, who I rate very highly and count as a friend, I don't think Tom would have come here and won. I don't think so. I think everything would have had to have gone wrong for the other guys and right for him. So it wouldn't have been impossible, but I think it was a real long shot. So Tom is, as far as I understand, he's doing the mountain bike marathon here, which is, he'll win it by 1,000,000 miles. Yeah? He'll totally smash it, I've no doubt about that. But to my mind, that would be Tom just picking up another mountain bike title, which would be the crowning glory of most careers. But for my mind, what I want to see Tom try and do is win the Tour de France. Because I think if he comes to the end of his race, can he or should he? Is that what you're asking? Physiologically, absolutely. Absolutely. The challenge with Tom is mentally. Does he want it? Because the self-discipline, the sacrifices, it's not just in how you live your life, you know, what you've got to do for 11 months, 12 months of the year, but actually even contained within the 3 weeks of the race, the way you've got to change your mentality. I'm not sure it's in his DNA. But I think if he gets to the end of his career, whenever that is, in 10 years' time, and leaves that question unanswered, could I have won the Tour de France, and give it a real proper tilt for 3 or 4 years, I think he'll regret it. That's what I think about Tom, because I think he's an absolutely wonderful talent, and he's unlike any other rider we've ever produced from these shores, actually. He's very, very different. So, shame he's not riding this tomorrow, but I don't think he would have won it. Good question. I like to take good questions. Oh, this is a tumbleweed moment. There we go, gentleman with glasses. Hiding behind that pillar.
So, who do you think is going to win tomorrow? Who do you think will get second? Who do you think will get third?
Oh, what?
You've got all these.
Do I actually have to answer? Can I give you definitive answers to that?
You have to give me 3 names in the order you think.
Okay, alright, okay. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. There's a rider in the pack, in the Belgian team, called Jasper Philipsen, who's the fastest sprinter in the world, and he can get up little climbs, he can do that easily. He won't be dropped in any of these climbs, and everybody is going to be afraid of him. There's a Danish rider called Mads Pedersen, who won a stage of the Tour de France this year, who is fast, really fast, and he's finished, and no one wants to come to the line with him. Right? So their presence in the race will shape the way the rest of the race plays out, because there are so many riders who will just have to get away and get up that circuit and never be seen again. And so what's going to happen is Remco Evenepoel is going to attack, and he's going to attack 47.3 kilometres from the finish line, which is with about 3.5 circuits to go. That's where he's going to attack Remco, and instantly, straight on his wheel, in a flash of green, he's going to be riding in lime green tomorrow for Slovenia. Tadej Pogacar will go with him. And those two will form an alliance briefly. And they'll work together, and they are in situations like that, the 2 fastest guys in the world. And that will force, and then the Belgian team won't chase because they've got Evenepoel on the road. So that puts Philipsen on the back foot because he's Belgian. And that will leave only the Danes and maybe 1 or 2 other random teams actually chasing. And I don't think they've got the firepower to do it. So, Then it comes down to Evenepoel and Pogacar. And Pogacar is more of a racing beast than Evenepoel. And Evenepoel is not the best bike handler in the world. And it's due to rain at about 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So Evenepoel's got to slap down on the third from last corner. He's going to slide across the road, and he's going to end up against the barriers in front of some bemused bloke with a bag of chips. That's what's going to happen to Remco Evenepoel. And that's going to leave Pogacar on his own. He's going to solo to victory, and he's going to do that brilliant thing when he comes over the line, which he did in the Tour de France when he won his first stage. He's going to take a bow. And he's going to be absolutely brilliant. Tadej Pogacar will be the world champion at the end of the day. That leaves the battle for second place, and it's going to be a straight-up fight between Mads Pedersen and Jasper Philipsen, or so you think. But actually, Philipsen is on a descending spiral, as we saw in the Tour de France. He won 4 stages and then no more, so I think he's tired. So Pedersen will finish second from the bunch, and Evenepoel will finish 47th because he's crashed, and Wout van Aert will finish third. So there you go. Pogacar, Pedersen, Wout van Aert.
We're playing that back tomorrow after the finish.
Is that red light on that thing? You're recording. What's the point of making predictions if they're never, if they're the obvious thing? Mind you, I don't think there is an obvious thing tomorrow. That's the point, actually. Normally there kind of is an obvious thing, but I don't think there is an obvious thing. Yeah, I think it's going to be absolutely true. Are there any questions about the Tour de France, or any of the riders who started the Tour de France and didn't finish them this year? Oh yeah, that guy. Say again.
What do you think about the Italian team? Like with your...
So, you're Italian? Yeah. I don't know what's wrong with Italian cycling at the moment. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know where the next great rider. Filippo Ganna, but he's not going to. He's not racing. But I don't know where the next Italian world champion comes from. If it's Bettiol, fabulous, but I don't think so. Not quite at the right level. Maybe when he won Flanders 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. I worry for Italian cycling a little bit because I don't know where the next Grand Tour winner is going to be. The next year, Ciccone should be that guy, but as he found out at the Tour de France, a bit like Pidcock, he hasn't got the mental discipline, I don't think, to win the Giro or the Tour outright. So I think he will always be a one-day racer almost, or a polka dot jersey guy, king of the mountains. But I don't see a rider tomorrow, unless it's Matteo Trenti again, but he's not as sharp as he was a few years ago. So Bettiol's your best chance, maybe, and I don't think it's a very good chance.
This year.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
But may I say, every year I'm lucky enough to go and commentate at the Giro d'Italia on the roads of Italy, and I've done it for 4 or 5 years now as a guest of the country of Italy and of the Giro, and it is my favourite month of the year. It's a beautiful race and a beautiful country, and for that reason, I would love to see the next Grandissimo, the next big champion come through. But I don't know who that person is yet.
Thank you.
No, pleasure. There we are, we're just warming up.
I mean, Penny's what used to be a young man, he's now a little old boy. Do you think Cav's got an appetite for coming back into next year to do much?
So Cavendish, when he crashed out at the Tour de France in those extraordinary circumstances, because in Bordeaux on stage 5, was it? No, stage 7, he was so close to winning. I mean, I was commentating on the race, and with 80 metres to go, I was getting ready to call the record. And then Jasper Philipsen came around and went, okay, fair enough, he's speaking. But he knows, I know, we all know that he was very close to getting that 35th win. And I'm pretty sure that if he'd stayed in the race, he would have found that victory. Because as I say, Jasper Philipsen got slower. What do we know about Mark Cavendish? Over 3 weeks, he'll get better. Yeah? But Cavendish knows that. And so, when he went home at Cavendish, he went back because he had to have an operation. He went back to the Isle of Man and he sat there and he just brooded. I could tell he was brooding. And he kept sending me and David Miller and Pete Kenyon text messages, like every 20 minutes. It's quite weird actually, we're trying to commentate and it was our phones kept pinging like that, because he was just sitting at home watching the Tour de France going out of his mind. Having said that, he has said nothing about his plans to anybody. I was in London 10 days ago at the premiere of his Netflix film, and I was talking to him, and I was talking to his closest friends, and people who know him really well, and his agent, and his wife, Peter, and separately I had conversations with all of them, and I said, what is Mark going to do next year? And I remember his wife saying, I haven't got a clue. He just literally won't tell me. That man can keep secrets like no one else on earth. But joining the dots, reading between the lines, I think that Mark Cavendish is going to race next year. Because I think if he knew it was dying, he would have told everybody. So I say 99% sure Cavendish will be at the Tour de France next year. That's what I think. And I hope to hell he gets the record there. Yeah. Because Cavendish is that fairly rare thing from a British perspective. He's a natural born winner. Now he came to prominence on the Tour de France in 2008 when, if you think back to the sporting context then, the English football team hadn't qualified for the Euros, right? Where were we at with all our other sports? The English cricket team were losing all the time. Tim Henman was trying to win Wimbledon, you know? But there comes this British guy who just says he's going to win and then does it. Says he's going to win again and does it again. And he does it 34 times and obliterates everybody else's records. He is a complete phenomenon. And I don't know why he doesn't get more respect. Why is he not Sir Mark Cavendish? Why is he not widely considered to be, if not the greatest, one of the very greatest sports people this country's ever produced? Because I think he is, genuinely think he is, and I don't think he's finished yet. So he's a hero. It can be quite difficult to interview from time to time. He's a hero. Any more questions? We're getting quite rowdy in the back, so I think we've probably lost Ned. Yeah, there's a couple of answers up here. Hi, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Wales beat England the other day today in the rugby.
Well done. All right. Yep.
Can Geraint Thomas win the Vuelta?
Can Geraint Thomas win the Vuelta? I don't think he can. I'm really sorry. I just think the quality of the opposition is going to be too high. Jonas Vingegaard is going there. Primož Roglič is going there. Remco Evenepoel is going there. These are not easy people to beat. Having said that, I don't know how much of the Giro you watched, but if that final time trial hadn't been as weird as it was, he would totally have won the Giro. So I don't know if that was his last chance. I'd hate to say that it was, but if that was his last chance, it was a damn good chance, and he kind of deserved that win. And I'm slightly broken for him that he didn't get it. I think the Vuelta's going to be slightly too hard for him. I'd love to be through on. But congratulations on beating England. Yeah. If there's one team I dislike, it's the English rugby team. I don't know why I say that. No, genuinely can't stand them. It's a bunch of posh blokes called Lawrence. But Clive Woodward is a nice guy, isn't he? Right, anyway, why we're on to rugby?
Do you write?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there, sorry.
Do you write and what do you write? What bike? What discipline?
I race a little bit on the track. In the veterans, I'm very bad. I've discovered there are 99 ways of losing and only about one way of winning a bike race. It's an incredibly hard sport in that regard. But no, most of the riding I do is just urban. I gave up owning a car 10 years ago. I live in London, and everywhere I need to get to, I just roll up the trouser leg and I jump on my bike. It's amazing how many miles I do like that. And at the Tour de France, when I'm on the road with the Tour de France, David Miller and I and Pete Kenyon, we take Bromptons with us, folding bikes, and every day we ride the last climb, or we ride the last mountain, or the last 20 kilometres, just to wake up in the morning to really get the heart rate. So yeah, that's my role.
You were saying about the golden age of cycling.
Yeah.
How much do the bikes, how the bikes are so good now?
Yeah.
Does that help the actual cycling?
I think people slightly obsess over average speeds. And so when people see performances nowadays and they compare it to the Lance Armstrong era, and they go, maybe we just rode up that mountain faster than Lance Armstrong. And they kind of draw all these very simple conclusions about why that might be. One of the reasons why that's a wrong, a false conclusion to draw is because bike technology has, as far as I know, it's not a big area of my expertise, but when I talk to people who really know, it is improved beyond measure. If you look at old footage of Stephen Roach and Sean Kelly from back in the 1980s, part of the reason why those mountaintop finishes are so epic is because they were out of the saddle, turning these massive gears because they didn't have the right gears at their disposal to do the job. And now you see them, they're able to ride so much more efficiently because they can turn as much more compact gears. And so bike technology and gear shifters, the whole thing is just gone up. And also some of the assumptions, and aerodynamics, don't forget that, some of the mad assumptions that people made about the width of tyres. There was that fashion in the 90s to go super, super skinny, 21mm tyres and stuff. And then someone figured out that just makes you slower. And if you have a bit more rubber actually pushing against the tarmac, it pushes you along faster, so that you can suddenly get thicker without a 25 mile. There's a big difference. So things, science constantly moves on. So that's a good part of it. And also, this technology is much more democratically available. So all the teams are pretty much riding top stuff, which is why breakaways are harder to catch. Everybody's better, nutrition's better, their training programs are better, their bikes are better, they're harder to catch. Gone are the days where you just let 3 French guys go up the road and give them 20 minutes and still beat them. That's why a Tour de France breakaway with only 2.5 minutes. It's really interesting. So I think the whole standard is right. No, the dice has been through there. There's one chat down there. Are you hearing me okay? Because I'm struggling to hear you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just let me.
I'm at the front though.
Yeah.
In all your years of commentating on the Tour de France, what's your greatest memory of the stage of the race, finish? What's your best memory?
Funny enough, the stuff that springs to mind most immediately is all the stuff that goes wrong with the Tour de France. It's just brilliant, isn't it? Something stupid is going to happen every single year. You just don't know what it's going to be, and then you go, oh yeah, of course something stupid is going to happen. This just happened. So there was that year Chris Froome started running up Mont Ventoux, he didn't have a bicycle. And people were like, what? What do you mean you haven't got a bicycle? You're trying to... Well, no, stop running. I mean, that was just brilliant. What about the year where the team bus got stuck under the arch in 2013, blocking the entire finishing line? Brilliant. I happened to be walking past it just when that happened, and it made the biggest bang, and then I just looked across and saw the bus driver just go, like that. Because the peloton were literally 15 kilometres out and coming in fast. There was another year where, this is one of my favourite things, where the gendarmes, who were there to, give the peloton safe passage, trying to clear a demonstration of farmers who were trying to block the road, tried to pepper spray the demonstrators and ended up pepper spraying themselves by doing it into a headwind. And then the cloud of pepper spray just got distributed over the peloton, which was coming through instead, and the entire race had to come to a halt while all the riders washed the pepper spray out of their eyes. So the gendarmes had effectively done what the demonstrators had completely failed to do. So it's stuff like that. What about the year Adam Yates was about to go into the yellow jersey? And he passed under the Flamme Rouge, the 1 kilometre to go, inflated arch. And just as he was coming through, total pinpoint accuracy, like an American smart bomb, the thing just went BAM! And collapsed right onto him like that. And he'd have to wait another 7 years before he took the yellow jersey, which he was about to take. So what I love about the Tour de France more than anything else is it's totally uncontrollable. It's not enclosed in a stadium or a basketball court or in a cricket ground. It's played out over 220 kilometres of open mountainside, with hundreds of thousands of drunk basque people spilling out onto the road and blokes in mankinis running alongside, and all that chaos. The beefeaters doing their thing. And stuff goes wrong. And the day they sanitise it and make sure that nothing goes wrong is the day I'm going to walk away from it, because it's much more than just sport. It's all the grand chaos of life. That's why it's so good. Yeah. What's that saying?
Is Jonas going to get the Vuelta as well?
Well, I predicted quite boldly earlier in the winter that Jonas Vingegaard would never win another Grand Tour. So I'm not going to make any predictions about Jonas Vingegaard. I don't know. He's going there with Primož Roglic, and Roglic has got unfinished business with the Vuelta because he still feels he should have won it last year. So I've got a feeling that Vingegaard will support Roglic. But if anything goes wrong with Roglic, yeah, he'll probably win that as well because turns out he's really good. Like really good. Like better than Pogacar good, annoyingly. But he's not good at one-day races, and that's why in our hearts as cycling fans, I think we're all pretty much with Tadej Pogacar because he's impulsive, and he won the Tour of Flanders this year, for heaven's sake. He takes on all these amazing challenges, and by and large, just comes out on top. Whereas Jonas Vingegaard is a bit like Chris Froome, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, do I? Yeah, I might do a bit. But he's a bit like Chris Froome, but he's just targeted the Tour de France and nothing else. He made that his entire... And there's a limited appeal to that, I think. Yeah.
So, in your tenure as a commentator, what riders have you seen at a very young age kind of right that they're going to amount to greatness?
What riders have I seen get it right?
What riders have you seen at a very young age have gone on to be amazing and you've called it at the time?
Oh, in other words, have I ever got anything right? Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, straight away, I remember my first encounter with Cavendish. He was only, I think, 22 when I first met him, which seems like a normal age now, but back then, it was very, very, very young to be racing the Tour de France. And I remember sitting down opposite him in 2007 when the Tour de France started in London. He didn't win a stage that year, but he started the Tour de France for the first time. And I tentatively kind of asked him, do you think one day you might be ready in the years to come, maybe in 3 or 4 years, to actually win a stage of the Tour de France? And he just looked at me like, mate, I'm fucking ready now. And I remember that answer, and I remember thinking, geez, he really is, isn't he? He's really ready now. So in a way, it came as no surprise to me that he went on to do the things that he's done subsequently. And the other rider who, yeah, I didn't predict it, but with hindsight, I perhaps did see it coming a bit, was actually Chris Froome. Because I'd seen flashes of what Froome could do. I knew how ill he had been with Rising and how that had debilitated his system for the length of time that it had. I'd been to visit him as a friend in Tuscany, where he was training and working alone. This is before he'd done anything of note. He was earning 80,000 euros, that was his salary, per year. And he was about to lose that job anyway, because Team Sky were going to get rid of him. And then he went to the Vuelta with all the illness out of his system, with those years of training in his system, suddenly able to fulfill his potential. And I was talking to him about this just the other day. In the 2011 Vuelta, he had 17 teams trying to get to his signature. And Sky were one of them. And he went from earning 80,000 euros to 4.5 million in the space of 3 weeks like that. So his ascendancy was like that. But I had seen, like, it kind of, I'm trying to make sense, with hindsight, it did kind of make sense if you understood what had happened to him before that. So, did I know that he was going to win 4 Tours de France? No, I didn't. It would have been 5 though. It would have been 5 had he not been told to wait for Wiggins in 2012. It's true. Any more? No. Will that do, Sarah? Yeah, does everyone want to take that? All right. Thank you very much. Just close off. You've been a really lovely crowd, actually. Great questions. I hope I've dealt with them. But more than anything else, thank you very much, Sarah. Thanks to everyone from Mapei. But I want you to have an absolutely brilliant time. And do me a favour, don't have your smartphones out to try to record too much on your phones tomorrow. Use these things. They're much more effective at looking, yeah? And just soak it all up and have a brilliant day tomorrow. Cheers.